Now, one of the things we need to at first explore here before we start to play with any VBA whatsoever is to have a quick review of the new macro security settings. Things have been ramped up security-wise in Excel, mainly because a VBA macro can actually do damage to your machine, because it can step out of the Excel spreadsheet and access parts of your filing system. So in order to prevent that, there are some security settings to take in account. The first thing to do is to check your own security settings. So we can do that by going to File, Options, Trust Center Settings, Macro Settings. Now this is the default, that all macros are disabled but with notification. So if an Excel file has a macro in and it's opened, it's disabled by default, but you are asked if you want to activate them. You could disable all macros without notification anyway, so that's the full level security. All VBA is effectively disabled, so it cannot work. Or we can disable all macros except those digitally signed, or we can enable all macros, which is totally not recommended because any code at all can run in files that you then open. So we'll stick with the default, it's the safest option. Any file that opens, if there's a macro within it, you'll be prompted to enable the content. We also want to trust access to the VBA project object model, only because we're going to be playing with the VBA ourselves. So this is the default setting. This is the setting I would recommend you keep your Excel at all times. Okay. What you also need to make sure is that any users you then distribute your Excel files to with VBA in, that they have the same setting and they enable the macros when they open the file. Now what happens when you try to open a file with a macro? Let's open this file here. This is the box we're getting, enable content. Now you need to physically answer this question. If you just click the cross, you are not enabling the content. You need to click enable content. Otherwise, any macros within this particular spreadsheet will be disabled. So I click enable content. Now the good thing is about 2010 is that we've said enable content. That's for this file. If we try and open this file again, we'll be not asked again. We've enabled the content, and as far as Excel is concerned, you're happy. Previous versions of Excel would have asked you again and again and again every time you open the file, do you want to enable the content? Do you want to enable the content? In 2010, you're asked once, and if you're happy, content is enabled. The other thing to now bear in mind really with 2010 is that if you do create files with VBA in them, so any macros, they cannot be saved with the normal XLSX file extension. They have to be saved in macro enabled workbook file extensions, and you can see up here that's .xlsm. Now if you try to save a file with some VBA, you'll be prompted to save it in a macro enabled environment. Otherwise, saving it in a normal Excel file will disable the code as well. So this is a macro file. It has a macro in it. It's a simple little button here that when we click the button, it types my name in the cell selected. So I can pick here, click, types my name. It's a very simple macro, but we've used it to demonstrate the security settings, which you can set per version of Excel. So everybody's machine can be set differently. And the fact that any files that you create VB inside of, so you have some macros inside of, must be saved with the new format, XLSM. Now you'll see it when you do a save as in the drop down, macro enabled workbook, XLSM, as opposed to the normal default, which is XLSX. So as long as you bear that in mind, we're ready to start looking at creating our own VBA code.